Something happened in our financial world. Something so quiet, so technical, so wrapped in expert language, that most people never realized the moment everything changed. Because there was a moment, a single turning point, when money stopped being a reflection of value and became something else entirely. A tool, a weapon, a lever for control. From that moment on, prices became illusions, debt became infinite, and savings became a slow-motion trap. People still think their money represents what they earned, but the truth is far stranger and far more dangerous. Tonight, we uncover the secret timeline, the real sequence of events that transformed money from a measure of worth into a system of engineered belief. This isn't just history, it's the blueprint of how your financial life is shaped today, without you ever being asked. To understand when money stopped reflecting value, we must travel back through centuries of experiments, crises, and quiet decisions made behind closed doors. You'll meet kings who manipulated coins, bankers who invented credit from thin air, economists who rewrote the rules, and politicians who destroyed them. But don't expect a straight line. This timeline is full of twists, a forgotten gold shortage that forced governments into a financial gamble, a war-driven loophole that accidentally created modern debt, a meeting in a quiet New Hampshire resort that rewired global trade, and a dramatic midnight announcement that permanently severed money from reality. Each moment didn't just change economics. It reshaped the way societies function, how wealth is distributed, and how nations rise and fall. And at the end, we'll connect these turning points to the modern world, where inflation is no longer a bug, but a feature, and debt isn't a crisis, but a business model. For most of human history, money had one job: to represent value. Early civilizations used commodities, grain, livestock, metal, to ensure a simple truth. Your money equaled something real. Then came precious metals. Gold and silver were consistent, rare, and universally valued. But rulers noticed a problem. Real money limited their power. You couldn't spend more gold than you had. You couldn't wage war without draining the treasury. You couldn't promise your citizens what you couldn't pay for. So the first cracks appeared. Kings shaved coins. They reduced purity. They printed paper claims on gold that didn't exist. Every time they insisted nothing was wrong, until markets panicked and trust collapsed. But the real shift came later, when banking families introduced a radical idea. Money didn't need to be the value itself. It only needed to represent the belief of value. If people trusted the paper, it didn't matter how much gold was in the vault. This idea was powerful and dangerous, because belief can be manipulated. Fast forward to the 19th and early 20th centuries. Nations were growing, trade was expanding, economies needed flexibility. Gold-backed money was stable, but rigid. Paper money was flexible, but fragile. After World War I, countries printed to rebuild, causing inflation. After the Great Depression, they printed to stimulate. After World War II, they printed to survive. Each crisis pushed governments toward the same seductive solution: more money today, and we'll figure out the value later. The world needed a new system, one that allowed growth without gold shortages, trade without instability, and spending without immediate consequences. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference, they created exactly that. The US dollar would become the world's anchor, backed by gold. Other currencies would peg to the dollar. As long as the US had enough gold to redeem its dollars, the global system would work. But there was a fatal flaw. Foreign governments noticed that the US was printing more dollars than it had gold to cover. And those governments wanted their gold back. By the late 1960s, the United States was drowning in the cost of war, social programs, and a booming global economy demanding more and more dollars. France called the bluff. Charles de Gaulle demanded gold in exchange for US dollars, a legally guaranteed right under Bretton Woods. Other countries prepared to do the same. If they succeeded, America's gold reserves would vanish. So on the night of August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon went on television and calmly announced a decision that changed the fundamental nature of money. The US would no longer redeem dollars for gold. He called it temporary. It was permanent. And at that moment, the global financial system crossed a point of no return. Money was no longer tied to value. Money was whatever governments declared it to be. This wasn't inflation. This wasn't a policy change. This was a philosophical shift, the end of objective money. Within a decade, something stunning happened. Inflation surged. Savings lost value. Debt exploded. Asset prices disconnected from wages. Banks grew more powerful. Governments spent freely without constraint. Cause and effect were now blurred. Money creation no longer required productivity, just permission. The system rewarded borrowing, not saving. Speculation, not production. Short-term gain, not long-term value. And the consequences reshaped society. Wages stagnated while housing prices soared. College tuition rose faster than income. Healthcare costs multiplied. And global debt became the fastest-growing product in history. This wasn't accidental. It was the logical outcome of fiat money. Money created by decree. When value is no longer required, debt becomes infinite. And when debt is infinite, dependency becomes systemic. Governments saw the fallout and tried to fix it, but every fix made the problem worse. Interest rates went up to fight inflation. Result: recessions, bankruptcies, and lost jobs. Interest rates went down to restore growth. Result: bubbles, speculation, and unsustainable debt. Money printing increased to stimulate economies. Result: asset inflation and wealth inequality. Regulation tightened to prevent future crises. Result: banks consolidated into even bigger, more powerful entities. Every solution reinforced the underlying system, a system where money isn't tied to production, but to policy decisions. And every time a crisis emerged, the world ran further from value and deeper into engineered monetary reality. Now look at today. Global debt passed $300 trillion. Governments print money in months that used to take decades. Central banks move markets with a single sentence. And inflation quietly erodes purchasing power year after year. The pattern repeats. Crisis, money creation, short-term relief, long-term damage, debt. Debt, dependence, political paralysis, public confusion. Most people feel like something is wrong, but can't explain why. Here's the simplest explanation. Money reflects policy, not value. Debt creates growth, not productivity. Inflation extracts wealth, not taxes. We live in a world where real value, skills, labor, productivity, grows slowly. But financial value, stocks, assets, credit, grows exponentially. The system must keep expanding because contraction threatens everything built upon it. The timeline we uncovered isn't over. It's still unfolding. Every time interest rates shift, every time a dollar loses value, every time a government announces temporary measures. 1. Money stopped reflecting value the moment it detached from gold. That shift turned money into a belief system, not a measurement system. And everything since has been built on that foundation. 2. Debt replaced productivity as the engine of economic growth. Governments, corporations, and individuals survive by borrowing, not producing, creating permanent fragility. 3. Inflation isn't an accident. It's the mechanism that keeps the system running. By slowly eroding purchasing power, inflation allows governments to manage impossible levels of debt without ever paying them off. Systems built on belief, manipulation, and artificial stability eventually face a reckoning. Not because of politics or ideology, but because mathematics always wins. There will be a moment, in the future, when the world must decide what money actually represents again. That moment will shape the next century. If you want more deep dives into the hidden history of money, debt, and the financial systems shaping your life, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video with someone who still believes their money reflects real value. Because understanding the timeline is the first step to stepping outside of it.